Think back to your first week at your current job. Did you go through an orientation program? Did your new boss go over information and materials with you? Did you shadow someone who reviewed processes and procedures or do's and don'ts? How much of that information can you actively recall now? Not much, I'd wager. You see, it turns out that even the most dedicated, educated, focused among us are limited in our ability and capacity to retain information. And your healthcare team is no different. If you want your team to take new steps or show up differently in some way, you can't just ask them once. In this episode of Your Practice Ain't Perfect, I'm going to tell you exactly what you haven't been doing to get your team over the hump. There are lots of great ideas on the flip side of the opening credits, so don't go anywhere. Let me get right to the point. Leaders who want teams to reach and maintain a high level of performance in anything must creatively and frequently reinforce the new behavior they want. These efforts must dot the landscape of the workplace and be encountered repeatedly by employees. If you want people to show up differently, you've got to trigger it over and over again. For example, let's say you work in a clinic whose patients are often agitated or combative. One day you decide to introduce your team to the mantra, "Always be kind," as a way to bolster their emotional intelligence and ensure an appropriate level of service delivery. You hold a big meeting where you explain how important this approach is, you review service excellence protocols, and you even spend considerable time on skill development training for dealing with difficult behavior. And when it's all said and done, everyone is on board. But after the meeting, very little changes. That's not because your people don't care, and it's not because they're lazy. It's because we forget. There's a boatload of research that tells us that just like the stuff you learned in your first weeks on the job, new information fades from our minds fairly quickly. Even when we learn something important, we return to our work environments and slip right back into the routines and patterns we know and expect, and which do not include that new information or actions. That's why reinforcement and repetition are key to changing behavior. To infiltrate our established ways of thinking and doing, we must see and consider that new information again and again. If this leader wants that "always be kind" mantra to stick, she has to creatively take on the role of refresher by putting reminders in plain sight in the months following that program I described. And there are many ways she can do this. She can leave notes on dry erase boards or hang signs or give out buttons. She can ask team members to share stories at huddles about how always remaining kind and calm paid off. Or if, for example, she encounters a really incredible YouTube video with a dashing speaker dispensing great advice, she can share that on LinkedIn or Facebook. Hint, hint. The point is that she's not just going to do one of these things, she's going to do many of them back to back to back over time. This repetition approach is actually an evidence-based learning and development strategy called little and often learning. This approach can be applied to virtually any topic. If, for example, you recently installed a new EMR, holding a 5-minute huddle each morning for the first few weeks to review a nuance or detail reinforces learning. Other strategies might include printing labels with reminders on them for the back of employee badges, or leaving post-it notes on the back of room doors, or making index cards to attach to the clipboards people carry every day, or even posting signs on the lounge refrigerator with the reminder of the week. We all know that leaders need to coach employees on the right way to do things and praise them immediately when we see it. But this kind of repetition also assigns value to what's being taught. The repetition alone designates the information as important, and eventually the employee, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, assigns greater value to it. So there you have it. Need something to change or improve in your clinic? Don't just tell your team what is expected. Ensure that they encounter reminders, reinforcement, and refreshers over and over and over again. You cut down on the forgetting by frequently reminding, refreshing, and reinforcing. What are some creative ways you keep things top of mind for your team? Take a minute to leave a comment in the box below, and let's keep talking about this. And I'd be so grateful if you shared this video on Facebook or LinkedIn to help others become more successful teachers and leaders. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hey! Friends, I'm so glad you stuck around and watched all the way to the end of the video. If you haven't seen the other episodes of Your Practice Ain't Perfect that are available on our YouTube channel, then there are some options right down there that you can check out. In the meantime, if you are planning a conference or an event or a retreat of any kind, then head over to joemull.com to look at all the ways that I can be helpful to you by bringing training content to your sites. That's joemull.com. Thanks again for sticking around. Take care.